everybody, and welcome to the Attractions Group podcast. Alongside Ryan Sir, I'm Don Helbig. Ryan, how you doing?
I'm doing very, very well. Looking forward to a trip coming up. You've got a trip coming up very soon.
I do, flying to New York City not long after we record this episode, and looking forward to doing some things there. New York Yankees game. Really looking forward to that. It's always been a dream of mine to see a game at Yankee Stadium. So it's going to be a great weekend.
Yeah, it sounds like you got a lot of fun coming up. But yeah, before we delve into this week's episode, let me remind you, we can be found on all your favorite podcast apps: Apple, Google, Spotify. You know the drill. And if you're watching on YouTube, which you should, make sure you hit that subscribe button and follow us on X/Twitter/whatever it's called now at attractions_GRP. So Don, we have a new face in the industry, and by new face I mean somebody that's been around for quite a long time but just got promoted. So really excited that we're introducing, for our first time on the show, Ricky Spicuzza, who's the new general manager of Kennywood outside of Pittsburgh. So welcome to the show, Ricky.
Hey guys, Don, Ryan, thanks for having me. I'm pretty excited to say this is my very first podcast as well. So,
exciting!
Yeah,
excited about that. No, I was just at Kennywood last week and had a fantastic time. And Ricky, I just want to congratulate you on your promotion to general manager of Kennywood and also Sandcastle. So can you tell us a little about your journey from starting out as a food and beverage team member there in 2002 to where you are now?
Yeah, so it is a journey for sure. You know, I look back, it's just like you hear all the time, it went so fast, but it was so long ago. It doesn't feel that long ago, but here we are 23 seasons later. I started at Kennywood in the Kennywood Pagoda, which is very famous at Kennywood, serving the hot sausage sandwiches. And, I started, when I applied at Kennywood, I said I would do anything but food. I did not want to do food. I wanted to work on a ride or in a game. And they kind of talked me into it. They said, would you accept food as a very last resort? And I reluctantly accepted that position in the food and beverage department. So, little did I know that it would change the course of my career at the park. So I worked in food for about 9 years, and I became a supervisor in the food and beverage department, and then moved on to be the operations manager seasonally for the park in the food and beverage department as well. And at the time, I just loved everything about the food industry. I was going to school for food and lodging management at the time because I really wanted to be at Kennywood and do something with that industry. And then in 2010, I had the opportunity. They called me one winter morning and said, good things come to those who wait. That's what our HR director told me on the phone. And there was a job opportunity at Idlewild and Soapstone, our sister park, right up the road. And it was actually for the human resources manager and aquatics manager at the park. So I took that job, and not knowing anything about lifeguarding at the time, I told them on the phone, I said, I am comfortable in the water. I'm not a Michael Phelps by any means at all. So I kind of reluctantly accepted that part of the job, thinking most of it was going to be human resources. But so I actually ran the water park there for several years. I became their director of operations and human resources at Idlewild, and then eventually their assistant general manager there. And I worked there for 11 years and just had the opportunity to go back to to switch over to Sandcastle, our water park right down the road from Kennywood. And I worked there for 2 years. And that was a really fun spot in my career because I got to lead that park through a multi-million-dollar rebranding project, which was super fun, phenomenal. We refreshed the whole park. And then last year, I had the opportunity to be the assistant GM at Kennywood and came back to where it all started. And just recently, I got the promotion to general manager. So it has literally come full circle. And just like the signs in the park, it says all roads lead to Kennywood.
Yeah, congratulations from me as well. But so Kennywood is a very historic park dating back to 1898. Um, being a more historical park on the National Historic Register, as a theme park, what does that mean to you both personally and professionally, knowing that not only are you entertaining people in today's world, but you're preserving history from more than 100 years back?
Yeah, it's almost it's crazy to think about, that I have this really super privilege and opportunity to even be in this position right now. So that's one. And the thing I love about Kennywood is everything we do, and at least with my part of my vision here, is everything that we do, we're always going to nod to our history of the park, because I think we have such a charm, such a nostalgic feel with, in the twist of modern thrills. So everything we do is going to be around that history, and what an honor and privilege that I have to do that. And what's great about it is that everybody in Pittsburgh feels that way as well about the park. So it's very important to them that we're doing that and paying attention to all the classic pieces of Kennywood.
Now, Ricky the Jackrabbit, such an iconic coaster, celebrated for its history, its significance in the industry, its unique design elements. Do you remember your first ride on the Jackrabbit? What that was like, and how has your appreciation for it evolved over the years?
Yeah, I definitely remember that first ride. So growing up, I was not a big ride person or a roller coaster person. I was always fascinated by roller coasters, but I was always afraid of them. And I think I was in second grade, and I was at the park with my family, and my mom and my aunt uh, took me and my brother and said, "You're going on the Jackrabbit." They put us in line, and I could say now, much later, that when on the ride with tears coming down, I was so afraid. I was crying to get on. I did not want to get on that ride. My mom and my aunt took us on. My brother was not crying when he got on the ride, and then when we got off the ride, we switched, and I was all smiles, and my brother was crying. So I remember that experience riding the Jackrabbit, and that's always stuck with me. And again, I kind of shied away from roller coasters for a long time, just because I was always nervous about them. But that changed as I got a little bit older. But something with the Jackrabbit, after I got off the ride, I liked it. And like I said, my brother was okay going on, but coming off, he was crying because on the double dip, he had his head kind of buried in my mom's lap, and he must have either hit his head or nose off of something. His nose was bleeding a little bit when he came out. And I remember that Kenny Kangaroo, the park mascot, was walking right there and ran over and grabbed a big plush from the game and gave it to my brother. And I've always remembered that about Kennywood at such a young age.
Well, thank God for Kenny Kangaroo for saving the day.
Yeah,
So, two other historic coasters. We're talking about Racer and Thunderbolt. So they're beloved. They're historic, but they hold up now, and they're beloved by coaster enthusiasts and families alike. Up until today. Um, what do you think it is that makes those rides so timeless, where they're still relevant now as they were so many decades ago?
yeah. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't point out the extremely talented and impressive team of ride maintenance technicians, carpenters, electricians, everybody that cares for those rides. They're the ones that are really preserving everything. And when you look at the work they do, I always tell people it's like they're doing artwork when they're taking care of these rides. So I think Kennywood has always had such a knack for doing that. And, it's amazing when you could think about that. I can ride the Jackrabbit, and it's really almost exactly the way it was over 100 years ago. When you look at some of the footage you've had through the years and photos, I mean, it's a great, just such a great piece of history. But the team here at the park, they're completely dedicated to what they do, and I think rightfully so. I think they all take a lot of pride in keeping these coasters around for as long as they have, and I truly think they're some of the probably top of the list in the industry for wooden coasters. But it's really just comes down to that they treat it like a piece of art.
Yeah, Ricky, if I had to put a list together of my top, say, 15 wooden roller coasters, those three, Jackrabbit, Thunderbolt, Racer. I mean, they're on that list. I mean, just fantastic rides. But you also have a standout attraction, Phantom's Revenge, a steel coaster in a park known for its wooden coasters and your classic rides. One of the things I've really liked about Kennywood is when you have added new hardware, like this. You've been able to add those rides, but maintain the charm and the parks, just that history and everything, nostalgia about it. Talk about why that's important.
Yeah, that to me, the Phantom's Revenge is right up there with what Kennywood has always done so well. It's the classic park, and then they introduce these modern thrills and rides that kind of give the park the edge that it has. So the Phantom to me is the blueprint of what Kennywood has done and has always done through the years. And that ride is phenomenal when you think of the history of originally the steel Phantom, and it was put in, and a lot of people don't realize how long that coaster held a lot of records in the industry. So it was really ahead of its time for a very long time. And then, fast forward and take it over to Phantom's Revenge. And it's still, among the top 5 coasters, in my opinion. I think it's definitely one of the top 5 in anywhere for just one of the best coasters around with speed and drops. And it's so unique. There's so many people that I've met through the years that come into the park and it's their first time. I actually got to ride the coaster with a vendor that was here, and they brought somebody from Italy where their shop was located, and they rode the coaster, and she had no idea that the second drop was so big compared to the first. So that is such a unique thing that you don't see anywhere. So she was pretty surprised when we went over the second hill, and I kind of started to explain that on the way up, that it's the second drop that's the big one on the coaster. So it's such a unique ride. And I always have, my brother actually used to work at the park. Actually, both of my siblings worked at the parks long ago, but my brother worked full time for the park as a mechanic, and the Phantom's Revenge was his ride. So we've always had a love for the Phantom's Revenge.
Yeah, I love me some Phantom's Revenge too. But so the Kangaroo was set to be retired, and then it came back. Can you talk about that decision, like how that came to be and the reaction to it?
Yeah. I remember that, and of course, it was at a crazy time in the world during COVID, or maybe a little bit after COVID. I can't remember exactly where we were in that whole time frame, but I remember when that was announced. I wasn't here at the park yet. I was still with the company, but I wasn't at Kennywood at the time. And when that was announced, and then the way it all kind of played out and changed, I don't think parks knew how we were all going to respond and bounce back from the pandemic. So, there were some decisions made to look at attractions and lineups and all kinds of different things. So, but the Kangaroo was one that really just stuck out in the perfect, typical Pittsburgh way. Their voice was heard. So I think that just started to pull all the momentum, and a lot of people realized, it's such a classic ride. It was the only one remaining in the world. So I think, it was important to bring that back, and the company was really committed to that. And, it was a great project to modernize, but still keep it the ride that it was. We had to make a few modernization changes, like with anything nowadays. But man, that was so exciting to bring that thing back. And I remember being in one of the meetings at the park about the announcement, and everybody, the marketing team did a really nice job, because they had the sound bite of the clicking sound the ride would make as it jumped up the hill. So it had that sound, and that's what they played in the back, almost to like a music or background music to that announcement. So that was a really cool thing. But I said it's perfect Pittsburgh blue collar the way about doing things is, they wanted that ride back, and the company saw that, and they wanted to keep it. And I think, it just, again, goes to show what Kennywood does, what we do, thinking about those things and preserving some of those rides. And now we're super proud to have the last flying coaster of its kind.
Yeah, I really enjoy that attraction.
Yeah, it's one of the best.
It's just so much fun. Just when you're with your friends too on, I mean, you just can't help but laugh. I mean, it's kind of a giggler type
Yeah,
of attraction. But I want to circle back to the racer real quick. One of only 3 single track racing coasters still in operation today. So can you tell us about the significance of preserving such unique attractions and the challenges that are involved to keep rides that are that old still in operation?
yeah, it's a challenge for sure. But I also think it's a investment, and I think it's a big show of what we think at Kennywood, what we want to achieve at Kennywood, and what we think makes Kennywood Kennywood. The racer is so unique, and I think it's probably one of the biggest. Or it's probably one of the most confusing things to explain about the racer being a continuous loop. So I feel like at least a few times a week, I have a guest stop me in the park or run around there asking, how does the racer work and how do you switch sides? And there's always a lot of questions there. So again, just like the other coasters, I mean, that's going to be 100 years old in 2027. So we're coming up on the 100th birthday of the racer. But I think it's just one of the things that we have a team of carpenters in the off season. We're up to about 25 to 30 carpenters that take care of that ride, and it's really about the preservation. Every year, last year we took one of the lift hills and we completely redid everything on it, all the track steel, all the lumber, all the bolts. And this year we have slated to do the other side. So it's a really neat thing, and we have again a great team that handles all this. But I love looking back at all the maps and charts they do, and they basically go through the ride on a layout, and they can map each section that they redo every year. So we always say that anywhere from 15 to 20% of a coaster track is replaced every year, or sometimes beginning and end of a year. But what they'll do is they'll log that, they'll mark it, they'll do all the changes, and then they'll keep completing the circuit on the ride. So we can go back and look at any map and see exactly when we replace the lumber, when we replace track steel, bolts, and you learn a lot about that stuff working at Kennywood. All of our coasters I've learned were from long ago. They're all out of they use Douglas fir exclusively on all the coasters. So that's the best coaster wood to use according to our carpentry team. But I think they do a phenomenal job of just categorizing it every year, looking at the project, laying it out, and managing that whole thing. It's pretty impressive that a lot of our guests don't get to see that, of what goes on and how detail oriented they are with it. But I think it's something the park has always done great with through the years, and we still continue to do that, because I think it's easy for anybody, for whatever the reason may be, to take a back seat to some of that stuff. But I think Kennywood has always went above and beyond with the wooden coasters.
So moving along from wooden coasters, but still talking about the classics, one of my favorites is Noah's Ark. Now, Noah's Ark is extremely unique, to the point where, like, I don't know if it could be built today, but can you talk about the challenges associated with having a ride like that? Or, well, I don't know if it's really a ride, more like an experience, but
Yeah.
something like that at your park in today's world?
Yeah, I love Noah's Ark. That, again, if you're making, a book about what makes Kennywood Kennywood, that's got to be in the first couple pages of it. The thing about Noah's Ark, and what I think ties back into Kennywood, is quirky. I love that word, and I love saying that about Kennywood. I think Kennywood is a very quirky place, or what we always say, it's weird, but in a good way. And Noah's Ark is right there. And that is such a unique attraction. I mean, it has a lot of weird history, too, that it was put in 1936, which was the same year of the big flood in the Pittsburgh area. So that was always a kind of a tongue-in-cheek story through the years with Noah's Ark. But man, that if you've ever had the opportunity for a behind the scenes, that's the one attraction you have to look at, because when you go inside the motor room, if you will, or what is moving the Ark, I mean, you're taking a step back into time for sure, and it's meticulously kept in there. But that's just another great attraction, the quirkiness of Kennywood. I remember, my grandmother talking about some of the gags and pranks on that ride when I was a kid, when it would blow the air and uh, up to through women's dresses and everything through there. She would always tell her, "You walk on the wobbly pieces." So there's just so much history there, and it's that repeat and circle of life in the Pittsburgh area that your grandparents and great grandparents have done it. So it's pretty neat to see, although the shell and all the lumber is replaced, but you're going through the a very similar attraction that some of your great grandparents have gone through, and that is just such a cool thing about Kennywood. You almost have to be from Pittsburgh and from Kennywood to get it, because I don't think that would work in a lot of other parks around the country. But at Kennywood, it fits right in, and it's definitely one of my favorites. If that's one, it's usually one of the first few stops that you got to make when you're bringing somebody new to the park to show them that.
Yeah, I agree. It's can't miss. Another can't miss, and a ride that I was really looking forward to as I was driving from Cincinnati to Pittsburgh to visit Kennywood last week was the Turtle. Uh, just one of my favorite rides there, and it's definitely a family favorite, of all your guests. So talk about just the history of that ride, what it means to your guest, and why it's important that you were able to refurbish that and keep it going after all these years.
Yeah. So many unique things when you look back. If you so you got the historical marker on there. When you look back, 1927 was a big year for the park. They put in the Turtle, they put in the Racer, the merry-go-round, or new merry-go-round was in. So that was a really big year. But the Turtle, another Kennywood staple, phenomenal, and really what's great about this ride is, and it's probably the number one comment that I get when you're near that ride, is you watch people that are riding it, that are now senior citizens, whether they're, we'll call them in their 80s or even older than that. They can ride it, and that's the same experience that it was long, long ago. It hasn't changed. One of the other unique things about this ride, as a Kennywood flat ride, it has always been in that location, which I kind of find fascinating because Kennywood moved around so many different rides, but the Turtle has always been in that spot. So to me, that makes it even a little more special that ride has been in the same place, the same foundations, the same footers, as it has always been. Although we've changed all that out, and that was part of the big restoration project last year. So we were able to close that ride at the end of the summer in 2023, and we took it down for the winter. And really, we were just doing that we were just going to only do the center foundation of that ride, and that was it. But when our team took it down, our maintenance department, of course, being, like I mentioned earlier, as dedicated as they are and all the pride they have in the park, they wanted to redo the cars. So they said, we're taking the ride down. We don't get to do that very often. Let's get the cars done. Let's do the sweeps and get the Turtles done really nice. Our auto body paint shop at the park, they took care of, they sprayed them all, painted them, sandblasted them, everything. And a cool thing we always point out is, for some reason, the Turtle seats were always this really dark blue for many years. And they were like, can we switch it to brown so it looks more like a turtle? And we're like, yeah, of course. I don't know why it was blue anyways. And to tell you the truth, it was probably because it was a cheaper item, or it was a color in stock that they could do. So that ride was just, really, really, we were all passionate about doing that. To take it down is always something, you get upset about, but you have to do it for preservation. And that ride came back in the spring, looks just like it has, but a little shinier than before. In the center was the foundation was changed a little bit, but it was pretty unique when they were tearing out that old foundation, which we kind of thought it was about 70 years old or so. There was all kinds of stuff in that foundation. I think back then they put in whatever they could to make sure it was going to hold up. I think we found a tire rim inside the center there, or big pieces of steel looked like an I-beam in there. So there was a lot of stuff that was put into that foundation. So yeah, we put the new one on, and now the ride's been running really well, and we're glad to have that one back.
Yeah, just so much fun.
Oh, it's a great. Like I said, it's the one ride where you could ride it as a kid, and you could ride it as a 85-year-old, and it's mild enough to do it, and the whole family can enjoy it. So that's what's definitely unique about it.
And I think the other thing about it too is the only place you're going to find that is Kennywood.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to bring up as well. I said it's another attraction where we proudly say that it's the last remaining of its kind. So, I believe the one before that was at Conneaut, and when everything kind of closed down there and shut down for good, that ride was gone. So, unfortunately, but fortunately, Kennywood was able to keep it all these years and hang on to it, which again, I find it's amazing when you think about it, that you have something that's almost 100 years old and it's still here, and going pretty well. And it's always those rides that are great for maintenance. They have the best uptime. They're a lot easier than any other ride. So the old rides were built very well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Kennywood is renowned for its fresh cut fries at the potato patch. How important are these iconic food offerings to the overall guest experience? Are there any plans to introduce any new culinary delights?
Well, I'll tell you, you can never ever introduce, change, or do anything about the potato patch. So we always kind of joke that you have to keep the potato patch just the way it is. It's the number one building at Kennywood, and it's so simple. I mean, everybody loves it. Everybody has to. When you're here, you have to do potato patch. I know, Don, you had it there. I'm seeing that photo now. I mean, it's
Yes.
one of those staples. You have to have it. Even working here, I have to get my fix in every summer. But man, the potato patch is just. I think it's an industry legend. Really, I think it's a legacy brand, and I think a lot of what you see in parks today were really kind of copied and were flattered from back then, that it was always from the potato patch. But I think in true Pittsburgh fashion, they're the ones that put the potato patch on the map and really made it what it is today. But so I always like to say that I don't see anything changing at the potato patch. We try to keep it simple and we have a great product. Don't mess it up. Keep it the way it is, but we're always going to introduce some new items throughout the park for sure.
So the renaming of attractions such as Potato Smash, it often brings new energy to familiar experiences. So what factors do you consider when renaming or rebranding an attraction, and how has the reception been so far for Potato Smash? I really liked the campaign that you did, and you let your guests, have a say in what that was going to be called.
Yeah, I think that's a win. We've done that a couple times at the park, and our fans have always gone above and beyond picking that. But again, like I said with Noah's Ark, quirky, weird in a good way. This is something that just makes Kennywood what it is. And the thing was, we didn't put in a new ride. This was our bumper cars, and through the years, it's been very difficult to maintain the cars that we had and get the parts and pieces. So we wanted to just get new bumper cars, but anybody could do that. So the team started thinking, like, what can we do to get a little bit of flair out of this? So there were a lot of kind of fun ideas, and I remember one of the guys we worked with on our capital project team. He actually said, well, what about we do like something with Pittsburgh? Do we do ketchup bottles, or do we do something with Pittsburgh? And then he just flat out said, what about potato patch? And then at first everybody kind of laughed about that in the meeting, and then the more and more we talked about it, we're like, oh, this thing really has some legs. So then when we talked to the company to do this, we asked to make it look like a French fry or a food boat, and they said they could do some fries and cheese on there. And man, what a quirky, cheesy thing we were able to add to the park. And in a great thing about the ride, if you look around, and Nod, maybe you got to see that, but there was a lot of cool things through there. They used the Potato Patch chef that's at the Potato Patch food stand. He's all through the ride, and they got pictures of him all through the city of Pittsburgh, water skiing on the incline, and doing all these cool things. And then, we, of course, Kennywood has a lot of these, but then we have the wall of just all the old quirky, there's street signs or Potato Man Crossing, and somebody put a stoplight, but they made it ketchup and mustard, and I think chives or something like that. All potato and food theme. So the team really had a lot of fun with that. But to me, this is just right from the Kennywood book of how to do something simple. And I think a lot of the fans really liked it. The name the attraction contest was really cool. I think we had 3 names. We did Potato Smash, Deep Fried Derby, and Speedy Spuds. So Potato Smash won hands down. It was by far, that was the most popular one, and really liked it. But man, I see a lot of kids going up here, and they're actually excited about getting to ride that, or when they see the fries. And we added some minor effects to the ride, and sound effects, and crackling fryer sounds, and lights flashing. So it was to me just right out of the Kennywood book. I think it's been a real win for us.
Yeah, it certainly enhances the fun.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of parks will come out with culinary dishes and name them after the rides, but you rethemed a ride named after a culinary dish. So hats off to you for being weird. So the Whip is the oldest flat ride in the park.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how that was able to withstand the test of time. And is there any maybe special maintenance or anything like that needs to be done on a ride that's that old?
Yeah, and just like that is a ride that it's moved all over Kennywood through the years. It's been in a lot of different spots. When I was a kid growing up, it was always where what is now our End Zone Cafe, but that building is the exact same, but they just closed it in as a restaurant. It was always there when I was a kid. But it was in several other locations through there. They put it in Lost Kennywood when that area debuted. But hey, that's another great attraction. And unfortunately, you're seeing less and less of those at parks. But again, it's the Kennywood maintenance team and the things they do to preserve those rides. And just like I said before, too, it's always, the older rides that do much better for us. They're built differently. They're built strong. They're built to last. And, there's really not too much special maintenance going on, other than, they take those cars down every year, and they're, rebuilding some. They're pulling parts when they do a lot of their non-destructive testing. But they recently redid those cars as well. We have a great guy in our paint shop that takes care of some of our body work. And I know they just redid those ones recently, but it's a really, really great ride. And I don't want to say easy, because it's, the maintenance team that's doing all the hard work there. But it's kind of an easier ride that is always reliable for us. And again, it's another great ride that you don't see too often. And it's right up there with the rideability is phenomenal on it, because just about any age can get on there. So I don't think we have the special program or maintenance program with that, other than just pride and preservation.
Cool.
Right, so Ricky Jeter's Pub is new this year, and what I liked about this is that building where it's at. I mean, it looks like it's always been there. Of course, it's new, but what has the feedback been from visitors, and how do you see it enhancing the park's, just the experience there?
Yeah, that has been a home run for us. That, and probably definitely my favorite project this year. And I do have to say, what I loved about that project is that was 100% done by our in-house team, and it was a collective team effort. I mean, they picked the colors, the walls, the name, the theming, everything about that ride was all done in-house by several departments: our artists, our carpenters, our food and beverage team. So there were a lot of people involved with that, and I think they hit the ball out of the park with Jeter's Pub. We were walking through the park one day, and we just wanted to add some sort of area that adults can grab a drink near the potato patch. And we had a couple ideas going around, just very, very simple. And then one day we're looking at that building, and I was walking by, and I'm like, man, it has this look of some sort of almost like a New Orleans style building. I don't know if that's what they were going for when they put that in, but it has that sidewalk and street vibe there. So kind of thought, what can we do to make this a location? Then I remembered back, I believe in the 70s, it was actually a food location. So we started to realize really fast, our maintenance team, all the utilities were there, the plumbing, all the underground, the electric, it was all there. So we really didn't have much to do. But then it just kind of started to snowball from there. And one of our food managers, I think, brought up the name. And to be honest, I wasn't a big fan of it at first when they said the name. I'm like, I didn't know how well it would go over. And the more we started talking about it, I'm like, this is going to be a huge hit for our fans, because again, anything we could tip the cap to our history, I think it's going to be a home run. So it has done so well. And if you look at that wall inside there with all the murals on there, it kind of looks like what we do everywhere at the bumper cars, the Jackrabbit wall. They went through, and those are all real items that were at the park. Ticket stubs or posters or signs for picnic days and ethnic days at Kennywood. And of course, we had some of our pictures of Jeter's back in his prime days in the 70s, I would think, at the park. So we started to really add those through there, and it came along. It was such a great location, and it's doing gangbusters for us. It's a great spot. And Don, I didn't know if you got to sample anything in there, but I think one of the most popular things in there is we partnered with a local brewery, Penn Brewery, and they made a strawberry funnel cake beer for us that has just been phenomenal.
I did not get to on that trip, but I do plan to come back, so I'll certainly mark that down.
Yeah, there's still a lot. We have a few more things up our sleeve for the pub that's going to come out in a few more weeks to add to the inside of that location. So there's going to be a few more tricks and surprises that you're going to see there.
Cool. So speaking of history and of food, Parkside Cafe, it's been a staple at Kennywood since 1899. So how did Kennywood, over the course of over 100 years, still maintain the relevancy and still want to keep a restaurant like that when it seems like this is an industry where something that's 10 years old is old?
Yeah, no, that one's amazing. And again, it's I don't think a lot of our guests realize that, of how old that location is. And I love it. Has great photos on the wall in there. You can almost see exactly the spots that you're looking at from 100 years ago or longer in that location. But I love that location. It has that. It's definitely I don't like to use the word old, I guess, but it's an antique. It's a classic. And when you go in there and you look at the big columns in the center, they're the original columns, and they're up a little bit with some spotlights so you can see that. But that's a lot of the stuff is original in there. The tin ceiling is original, although it's that location has changed so many times. But that is such a unique location in there. As a kid growing up, I never wanted to go into the cafeteria. It was we didn't like to go in there. I think at the time, I think, oh, that's where all the older people would hang out all day. But now that's probably one of my favorite places to be. If you're here as a guest, it's a great spot to sit on that patio and people watch, and just that's one where you feel like you step back in time when you're in that location, just because of the historical presence of that building. It's really, really great. And we want to keep we put a lot of resources into that every year to make sure that we're doing our job to preserve it. Even just recently, again, things guests don't get to see, but it was a big deal for us. We had to go through and we dug out some of the main water lines in the winter. So we actually lowered them and upgraded the valves and lowered them further into the ground to be out of the frost area, just to help with that location, because it was, it's important for us to keep it going. Of course, as you know, we're open all through December and into January now. So that was something we've done. We did kind of a multi-year maintenance project on there to help do some upgrades for us that guests don't get to see. But that's again, it's just such a unique place there when you're inside there, and that's what I always love to see, to take people to see those photos that are hanging on the walls, just because you could see exactly where you were in that building just when it was put in. A lot of history there.
Ricky, Kennywood hosts special events like Annual Fall Fest, holiday lights. Can you tell us about the planning and execution of these events and what visitors can look forward to when they experience them?
Yeah. We're getting ready to kick off our Fall Fantasy Parade. Parade's coming up, which is a very exciting time of the year for students, especially because I think we have more than 130 different bands that'll march in the parade every night, as we do that from August 3rd through the 18th, I believe. And something we're doing this year is we're celebrating. Pittsburgh was kind of our theme through the summer, so we're actually paying some tribute to all of our local parks. So Kennywood, Idlewild, and Sandcastle, you'll see featured in the parade. Our team of our park artist and she's been working tirelessly on those floats for a long time. She's very close to having them just about finished, and they're getting ready to go. So that's a really exciting one. And one of the things I do want to point out is we just announced today for the Fall Fantasy Parade, but we're actually bringing a really nice ticket price for senior citizens. So 65 and older, we're doing a $19.99 gate price for them, so they can come out. And it's a comment that we kind of hear often, so we want to make sure that we're taking care of those folks that are going to come out and support their grandchildren and maybe bring back some old memories of what they used to do at the park. So Fall Fantasy is coming up. That's going to be a great one for us. We have a lot of floats, a lot of bands this year, and we have a few added things where I think we're going to pay some tribute to some of our local police and fire department, and we're going to have them join in on some of the parades. So we're excited about that. This time of year is probably my favorite time of year for several reasons, and one is I think that the time of year I'm most excited about is Halloween. So we're getting ready to go into our Phantom Fall Fest, which is definitely it's a top industry event. I think at Kennywood they do a phenomenal job here of everything they roll out. So the last few years it's kind of changed. So we do a play during the day and fright at night. So you can have kids here during the day, and then after 6 o'clock it turns into the scary event, and that way families can kind of enjoy it all day. But Kennywood has always done a great job with the haunted houses and haunted attractions. Our director of operations has to be one of the best in the industry with the ideas, and taking that whole program that she's developed with Phantom Fall Fest is unlike anything. And we have people that have come back year after year to work for us for that event, that have done this since the inception of Phantom Fright Nights at Kennywood. So that's probably my favorite event of the whole year.
Yeah, very very famous event especially when it comes to seasonal Halloween events. But so we're not off the whole classic thing now. Tell us about your carousel.
The carousel is great. It's got there's some unique things with the carousel because it is Kennywood's third carousel. So the original carousel building was actually a building that we just rethemed this year. It used to be Johnny Rockets, and now we rethemed it back to something more classic to the park, where we actually, and again, our one of our food managers came up with the idea, the name, and it's called Carousel Burger Company. So that was the original carousel building for the park in 1899. And then Kennywood had bought a second carousel and replaced it. And then when they bought the third carousel, which is the current one, in 1927, it didn't fit in that building. So they actually had to build the pavilion that it's in now. And here we are with that Denzel carousel. But it also has the original organ of this carousel is one of the original organs from the carousel before our current one. So the organ is older than the carousel. I believe the organ is from 1916. And
It's also one of the fastest ones too when
you
you're
know
on it.
what? We joked about that. It is very fast. I thought it was me. As you get older, it gets harder and harder to ride certain things. But that's what I always tell people. At what age does the carousel start to make you feel really dizzy? But I'm glad it wasn't just me with Kennywood's.
No, I loved it. I mean, it's a classic. It's so much fun. Um, but also, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up something that you recently did a drone show.
Oh yeah,
I believe to be the first drone show that's ever been done in Pittsburgh.
yeah.
So, what was the feedback?
Well, that the feedback was phenomenal, and I guess I didn't realize that we were the first one in the Pittsburgh area to do a drone show. I believe one of the Pittsburgh Pirates recently did one a few weeks after we had ours, and I had no idea that was the case, but we announced that we were doing the drone show, and we had a lot of great feedback on our social sites about the excitement of the drone show. But as it got closer and closer, we just started to hear all the feedback, the momentum that was building up. So we knew it was going to be a big event, but I think we were all kind of shocked and surprised of just how popular it was. The park was absolutely jammed. It was a great vibe. It was kind of in the middle of kicking up, our Celebrate Pittsburgh event. So it was a huge thing to add, and the company that we used, they let us come up with six custom designs. So our marketing team, they handled that and picked some of the designs. So it was funny when we were doing this. We've done fireworks for years over 4th of July, and you kind of know what to expect. But a few minutes before the show, we were all kind of sitting there and we're wondering, what are we going to expect? Are we going to see it? Or how high are they going to be? Are they going to be in the right viewing area? So I would have to say I was a little bit nervous a few minutes before the show because I just didn't know how it was going to work. But as the drone started to kind of come up into the sky, you could hear the crowd start to get really loud. And then, as you can see, it turned into the big Kennywood arrow across the sky. And it was massive. And the crowd, burst into a loud cheer. And then I felt phenomenal. I'm like, oh, this is great. And it was such a cool event that, unlike anything we've had at the park. So there were some great things. They did a Kenny Kangaroo drone image. They did our Noah's Ark and whale. They did a jackrabbit with a double dip and a lot of different things through there. But that's definitely going to be one of my greatest memories at the park, is being here for that drone show. So I think you're going to see. I think you're going to see some more of that in the future for sure.
Yeah, the drone shows definitely go over very well. But so Kennywood offers, a really good experience for thrill seekers, but it also offers a lot for families, parents and kids to do together. Can you talk about the importance from a business standpoint of having that kind of mixture in terms of enough to attract the teenagers, but also to make it satisfying for the parents of 5-year-olds?
Yeah, and that's just part of the circle of life. Again, I said it's so important that we attract all age groups at Kennywood, because it's why people keep coming back year after year. They come to Kennywood. They were brought by their parents or family members at a young age, and they have all those core memories growing up at the park. So of course they want to do the same. So it's with their kids and their family as they get older. So it's extremely important for us to always do something for young kids. I think we have a great kiddie land. I believe Kennywood was one of the first to actually dedicate a whole land in the park to children. So I think I think they've always done a great job with that. And it's always something we're thinking about anytime we're introducing a new area, a new ride, anything, can families do it? So we're always going to entertain the teens and the thrill seekers, if you will, at Kennywood, but you have to have enough for everybody to do. So I think the Kittyland area is such a important part of Kennywood. And it's one of those things that you've seen we see recycled through so many years. Kennywood has swapped different things out and back in, and I'm proud that we have some 100-year-old rides in Kittyland as well, which is the Mangles Carousel and the Ferris wheel. So they're both 100 years old this year, I believe. So that's just a phenomenal thing to think about. That you could be, when you're in the little Ferris wheel, you're in that tiny little car, and there's a good chance you were in that same car that one of your great grandparents were in. So where you could mimic that photo of maybe your parents when they were younger, and there's a picture of them in the Ferris wheel. So I just think that's such a great spot, a great thing that Kennywood has always done, and we're really proud to have those rides for all ages.
Ricky, they say Kennywood is, all roads lead to Kennywood.
Yeah.
And you're not that far away from so many, like major cities. Cincinnati, less than 5 hours. Cleveland, probably less than 4 hours, and that. So, talk a little bit about geographically, where Kennywood is located and how easy it is to get there.
Yeah, Kennywood is in western Pennsylvania, and like you mentioned, we're a very short drive from the Cleveland area. I believe about two hours or so from Cleveland. West Virginia, very close as well. Some other cities in Ohio. I think we're about 5 hours from the Philadelphia area. So it's really in a great spot. But we are surrounded by a lot of great parks, and we're within just a couple hour drive from a lot of those parks. So I think that was always part of it. It was in such a convenient location on this side of the eastern side of the states of where we were located. It was just a great route where you could get in and make a day trip in a couple hours and be at a park like Kennywood.
Yeah. Well, Ricky, thank you for being your first podcast.
Yeah, I got to thank you guys.
No, we're thrilled to have you, and we're excited for the future of Kennywood. It seems like it's in good hands. So we really appreciate that, all you've done leading up to this and all that you're going to accomplish as a general manager. So just to close out, if someone's interested in going to Kennywood, where do they find tickets? How do they keep up with the park? You know the drill.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. You can always, all of your best deals are always going to be online. I'll give you the inside scoop is at any park you ever go to, don't ever pay a gate price. You always go online. So you can go to Kennywood.com and you can get day tickets right now. We have tickets as low as $29.99. We have that 65 or older pass for $19.99. And of course, for the experts, the season pass is always the way to go. It's your biggest bang for the buck. You pay for it in 2 visits, and then you get all the extra perks. I think Dawn knows some of the perks that come with that, with friend tickets and discounts and all kinds of different things. So that's the way to go. But always go online, Kennywood.com, and look at some of the deals that we have going on. And I hope to see anybody who has never been to Kennywood. I hope you make the trip one day, because it's a dramatic difference that I think that anybody would really like. But thank you guys for everything you do for the industry and your passion and energy, for sure. It's definitely appreciated.
Hey, it's the fans that push us along, but thank you for participating with this. But all right, cool. Well, thanks again, Ricky. We got the Pick Six coming up next.